Buenos días a todos. Muchas gracias una vez más por
Good
acompañarnos.
morning, everyone. Thank you once again for being here with us today. In this webinar cycle, we'll be talking about artificial intelligence, GeneXus, and some new stuff on the roadmap. So just to go over the latest improvements in AI and the opportunities that this means for GeneXus development. For this talk in particular, we will have José Lamas. José is a member of the R&D team at GeneXus, and he is a product manager at Server. So, José, the floor is all yours. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm sorry about being late. I had some technical difficulties. We have a lot of AI, but even so, you know, sometimes some things will break. So about artificial intelligence, I have mixed feelings about this. On the one hand, I say, well, it seems that it was yesterday that we started with this. And on the other, it feels like 1,000 years ago. So for the vast majority of people, ChatGPT, what you have on the screen is the main trigger. It's where things got massive in terms of AI. And it feels like yesterday and like a long time ago, because it was presented in November, on the 30th of November last year. And however, it was something that in 4 days had 1 million users. And in the first month, they got to 100 million users. And ever since then, since that 30th of November, a lot of things have happened, and it's constantly changing, especially in terms of everything that is developed around it. And one thing that is clear is that it's not just another technology. It's one of those things that it's a breakthrough. It is completely paradigm shifting, and it forces us to rethink in terms of where the world is going, in particular those of us that work in technology and information technology, software, and so on. We need to rethink our strategies. Today, precisely, we will talk about these changes and what shifts we need to have in ourselves, and what is the roadmap that we can start to see for the near future. And of course, this path is ever changing. It's a winding road, and it means that we need to be constantly paying attention so that we can steer the wheel really fast. So let me start with something that we have already done in terms of what we have to do. And it's this thing that you have on the screen. This is GeneXus Next. I don't know how many of you have already given it a try. Again, it feels like yesterday, but it was presented in February of this year. I'm sorry, there are a couple of hands raised. I don't know if it's that someone has a question now or maybe for later. Okay, anyway. As I was saying, it was presented in February, early this year. And then we're going to see in much more detail what this is all about and everything that underlies it. But well, this idea, you know, that a demo is worth 1,000 lines of codes. So 1,000 lines of code. So let me show you a bit about how it works later. Okay, let me see if I can share my other screen. Just bear with me 1 second. Okay, can you see it? Good. That is the GeneXus Next screen, which is basically a site that allows you to describe a certain business in that search bar, and based on that, it's going to create a back office. So in a nutshell, that's what it does. Yeah, Gabriel, just because I saw that you raised your hand, we have at the end a Q&A session, okay? So you can describe your business and you can be as succinct as possible. For example, you can write something like supermarket, or you could write pharmacy. or travel agency. You have a couple of examples actually down there. We could say, for example, lawyers firm, also legal department management, assistants, the different cases that the firm deals with, and the clients to which we represent, the clients which we represent. So you can be very succinct, or you can even make a few suggestions, and then you click and you say, this is what I want to get. There it is, analyzing the business description. And this may take a few minutes, but in the meantime, so that we don't just wait until it's done, I'm going to tell you a bit more about the stuff. Oh, look, here we have the first message. It's suggesting an application name. It's suggesting a slogan. And it tells you about the entities that it thinks the back office should have for this case in particular. So to have lawyers, assistants, clients, cases, documents, payments, and so on and so forth. We can change the name if we feel like it. We can change the tagline. For example, we can say, let's fight for justice. And it's going to ask us to choose a theme, a style. We click on publish. It starts working. And as I said, this is going to take approximately 5 minutes or so. Then we're going to circle back to this. But now let's go back to the rest of the stuff that I wanted to tell you about. And then we will see this once it's already done. So here we go again. Let me see if I can find it. Yep, there we are. That's the presentation. And on we go. So this is all because of artificial intelligence. But as you know, in GeneXus, for more than 30 years, we've been using artificial intelligence. So a question that you may be asking yourselves is, what has changed? What's going on? And what's going on in this case is that artificial intelligence of the generative type has become really strong lately, as opposed to the symbolic AI, which is the one on which GeneXus development has been based for most of its time. I don't want to bore you with too many definitions, but to give you a clear overview of the difference between symbolic artificial intelligence and generative artificial intelligence. The former is rule-based. Yeah, it's a way to get to results based on data and some rules. So what it defines in its model is the rules that it has to follow, and based on which things, other things will happen. And then it has a data input, and that big symbolic artificial intelligence model is capable of making very sophisticated deductions based on the model that was used to be created. And that's what we've been doing for a while. The other kind of artificial intelligence and to get results based on AI is what we call generative AI, which is based on probability. And it generates content based on probabilities learned through the input of data when you train the machine, let's say. So as human beings, we use in our own type of intelligence, in our own ways of thinking, we also use different ways to process information. Think about the difference between the process that you go through when I ask you to multiply 45 times 28, or the process that you make when you have to describe a picture or to analyze a poem. Both of them are ways of processing data using intelligence, and both are very used by humans, however, very different from one another. This is analogous, but it's not exactly the same, but it's very similar. Which one is better, one or the other? Well, but just like when you need to answer questions, when we need to answer questions, it depends on what you want to do. If you want to do those mathematics, you want to use a process that could be described as a deterministic process to give you accurate results. If to do your business numbers, you don't have the exact results, then you could be paying more than you should or getting less money than you should. So your business is going to depend on having really accurate results. However, if you want to write a poem, then you want to use your creativity. So you can't use a procedure that's going to tell you if this happens, then this should happen, and so on and so forth. Because most likely, if you do that, then you're going to end up with something that's not going to be a poem. It's always going to be the same poem. It's going to be a very boring poem. So, as I was saying, the latest improvements in artificial intelligence go precisely hand in hand with generative AI for language, for images, for audio. And in particular, a lot of progress has been made in terms of natural processing language. So language modeling also has its rich history. Again, it has had an exponential boom in the last couple of months, in the last year, but it's been around for a while. What has triggered this huge wave is what is called large language models. These are AI models that are pre-trained, and we use them to generate text. Initially, the goal was to be able to predict the next word. So they were trained based on certain content, and they should be capable of predicting the next word, considering the beginning of a sentence or some sentences. It should be able to predict the upcoming word based on those inputs that it had before, whether they were sentences or isolated words. Then it was possible to use that to answer questions. So it was not just about generating the next word that would come in a speech, but also asking it to give you the answer to a certain question. And even what we see nowadays with ChatGPT instructions, asking it to follow a certain process or procedure, then it should do this or this or that. So, and even meta instructions, right? For example, I want the answer to be short. I want the answer to be long. I want to give me a step-by-step answer justifying why you provided each answer, or because you wanted to have a certain tone of language, or using, for example, a regional variety of language, for example, let's say Uruguayan Spanish. So some of the greatest advancements that has been made ever since ChatGPT came to light, when it was announced, at the beginning it was ChatGPT 3, then ChatGPT 4 was released. And one of the greatest advancements that it presented was the possibility of using what we call multimodal AI, which means that it's not just capable of interacting based on text with natural language, that you just write and it will give you text in return. But as you can see, you can just upload images and ask it to describe a picture, or to just change it for another picture, or to process any kind of information related to that image in particular. The same thing with audios, any other kind of documents, and so on. And that is what we call multimodal AI. Another thing that also came up over the last couple of months is what we call LangChain. LangChain is, as it says there, a framework designed to be able to chain different interactions with assistants or services that are AI based. So instead of interacting exclusively with you, it's like meta programming in a way, because it will also it will do something like this. To get this result, it will ask a certain service. To get this, it's going to ask that, and so on. And it's going to get results from a lot of different sources, and that's going to chain everything up. And that's how it uses AI. Then we also saw the emergence of what we call autonomous agents. These are another layer on top of this, because instead of you writing that process, that chain of different calls to different services to reuse results and ask different questions and so on and so forth, what it gives you is the possibility to have an autonomous agent. And the best known one, the best known example is AutoGPT. And basically you can ask Auto GPT to do a full task, and it's going to be able to figure it out through deductions in terms of the calls to the different assistants that it needs to make. It's the same as the previous example, LangChain, but it's more autonomous. So it is the chat that's going to create that process and to run it. Even a week ago, I think it was, with the new announcements for ChatGPT 4, one of the latest things that they mentioned was what we call greater steerability. Steerability in terms of how you can give it more detailed instructions and how the model needs to behave in certain circumstances. But one of the most important things that they announced is this, which is the possibility to define the interaction with the API in terms of how you do the function calling management. This means that you can give it a certain input, you can define certain functions, that those functions can, so you're gonna implement these functions, and you can, for example, describe what they are, what their name is, what they're for, the different parameters, and to the extent that it has them in the right context as available functions, then when you ask it to do something, or you ask it to give you a certain answer, it will have the capacity to see what functions it can call. It will call them, and it will use those results to give you answers. In this case, the example that we have on the screen is the one that you get, actually. They give you this example themselves, and you tell the model that there is a function that is called getWeather that has as a parameter a city, and that it will give you the temperature in Celsius. So when you ask the chat, what's the weather like in Boston right now, it will have some processes, some underlying processes, because it will detect the function that is needed. It will call the function, and it will use that information to build its response. So it's more and more similar to an assistant. So if the first assistant felt like having a secretary that knows a lot and can look up information and can respond to you in natural language and it can understand you in natural language, this is also an assistant, let's say a secretary that has been trained with tools and functions that will give you many more results. So whenever you say, for example, if I need this kind of query, you can use if I have this kind of query, you can use these tools, it will do so, and it will be able to figure that out. So, as I was saying, these are just some bullet points of the main stuff and the main advancements and announcements that have been made over the last 6 months, ever since November last year. As you see, there are so many things that are changing. There's a lot to read, a lot to be used, a lot to try. And that's what's really cool about this. Those of us that love this, Well, it's something that is ever changing, that it's constantly growing. And we need to see the impact of it and how this is going to change us and what we need to change to adapt to it. Those of us that work in the software industry, it's of course going to have a certain impact. Actually, in two ways, it's going to give us tools to change the ways and the processes that we follow to develop software ourselves. And it's also going to change us in terms of the kind of software that we need to develop and what kind of software we will be producing for our clients. In terms of how we develop it, maybe that is a bit more connected to GeneXus next. Let me check if it's already done. Just give me a minute and we can see the result. That other screen that I was sharing with you. Let me see if it's this one. It says your project is ready. It's available. You can click on the link. And as I showed you at the beginning, based on the description that I gave it, it managed to choose the different entities that I needed to create for this model. And we have an underlying GeneXus knowledge base on which we defined the entities and the different transactions. We used AI services to ask it, okay, what kind of data should an assistant have? What kind of data are necessary for these cases, for these clients, and so on and so forth. And with that, we defined the structure of the transactions. We apply work with patterns. We use design. We ask what queries would be reasonable to have, for example, a dashboard of the business. And so yeah, for example, the number of the amount of the invoices and the information per client, or maybe the number of invoices that you have issued. So you create the knowledge base, you create the bill, you generate the application, you publish the application. What you deliver to the user as a result is that back office, that site that we wanted to create, up and running. And that's the slogan. You can see it right there. So we also use it to generate some test data. We have some assistants already that already appear there. We have a few examples of the cases, this person versus this person, some of your clients, the main documents, for example, appeals, complaints, invoices that you have issued, the different lawyers in the firm, and the payments, and so on and so forth. And you even have a dashboard where you have published all the different APIs for the processes of that back office. And here you have the Swagger dashboard with open API. And you even have the mobile application, the mobile version for this back office so that you can just access it from your mobile. So you see that we've done the whole process in 5 minutes. Let me go back to the presentation, just a second. There we go. That's what I was showing you in terms of GeneXus Next. Okay, so what's behind GeneXus Next? Now, this is a bit more abstract. We are using GeneXus Next that has AI assistants and that is using this generative type of AI. And with that, we use it to create and customize a GeneXus model that will use symbolic AI. Now, in this case, it is a deterministic and probabilistic type of intelligence to build mission critical solutions and systems. This is the abstract vision of how everything works. And this is where that thing that we said about which one is better comes into play, because it depends on what. If you're talking about generation creation, then of course generative AI is really, really cool, and you can absolutely leverage it here. But for mission critical solutions where you need to have, for example, the back office for your business up and running, you will need also some more deterministic things that will give you the certainty that that my business will not just break because it made the wrong call. This is the vision for the creation and maintenance of the systems. This is where we were standing using a low-code model that's GeneXus to build applications. But now we are taking that to the next level, and we have the possibility of working with a no-code model. And we're talking here about that modeling that, well, what I've shown you so far is the list and the description of the entities that it manages, but now we have a path that using that no code, you can get to that low code level. And also you have the possibility of eventually using this for other kinds of users. Maybe users that don't know that much about GeneXus, how to use GeneXus tools or similar things to that, because it is based on natural language. So that's why it's possible. It's available to a lot of kinds of users. And this is the full picture, right? The whole vision where we have a continuous flow from end to end, from natural language to the very application, which is what we saw in the demo that I shared with you a couple of minutes ago. So you have very specific tools for different stages of that building process, that creation process. And I love to talk about the analogy with what we do with architecture and architects, where you dream your house, you talk to an architect, and the first thing that the architect will do is they will give you a few sketches in a language that feels absolutely understandable to common users. But you just need to define whether it's going to be a house or a building or block building, what the roof is going to be like. And that is going to be part of the sketching stage. Then, just like in GeneXus, you're going to have further details because as you know, we use this modeling within GeneXus, and that's going to be, if we compare it to building a house, it's going to be more like drafting the blueprints and the descriptions and the plans and so on and so forth. And then based on those blueprints and descriptive memories, which is the low code model, it will build automatically the application. So this is what we just saw. That's the GeneXus next part that follows these steps. But allow me to show you also where we're going towards, where we're going with this, because in our roadmap, I think that this was being released in beta, one of these things, which is to extend and to allow us to iterate at this level of model, this no code model, using the very same chat interface. So it's not only that it will describe your business and give you a number of entities, but once it presents them to you, you can say, okay, but you should also add these data and I want to add this for invoices, or I need an extra entity. And you can do that both structured on the right side by adding and rearranging some stuff, or even using instructions on the chat. That's the kind of interaction that we want to achieve at this level. It's similar to GeneXus, but much more abstract even. And if you know GeneXus, you will see that it doesn't say invoice ID, or you don't have any asterisks that it has primary keys. So it's an even higher level model. We also want to give it the possibility to interact here before you create that application that you will then download on GeneXus with design things and queries and so on. Then based on what you generated there, you can connect it with the rest of the GeneXus world. So that was a low code, and what you generate using next is a KB that will also be stored in a GeneXus server, and that will allow you that it will allow you to edit it using the traditional IDE, for example. And at the same time, both in GeneXus web and in the IDE, you will also have some assistance for the addition at this level of modeling, which is a low code modeling. It will also give you assistance that will allow you, that will help you with that modeling. So here, for example, you're using a chat to create, to write queries on the system, or you could also use it to create workflow flows using AI. So this is a bit about what I wanted to tell you in terms of the tools that we have available in GeneXus and that are going to affect us in terms of how we go to develop software. So this is where all the things that I told you about next come into play. And this idea of having many more assistants within GeneXus, whether it's GeneXus Web or GeneXus with its traditional IDE. Then the next thing is, okay, how is this going to affect the systems that we need to create using GeneXus? And that's gonna, there's a lot to be said about that. And we're absolutely convinced that all applications from now on will have AI components. It's not a matter of which applications or what they're for, but this is like when graphic interfaces came and all the systems migrated to graphic interfaces. This is exactly the same, right? All the applications will have some AI component, and they will use all this processing capacity of natural language and document and image processing to enrich the systems. So some patterns that we start to observe have to do with this, for example, which is intent-based navigation. We all have a system that we know that it's a navigation that is based on clicks or stuff like that, and we usually identify one of the main bottlenecks for users. It's knowing to what part of the system they need to go to overcome some to do some tasks. So what we try to do with this is to talk about our intention to say, for example, that you want to input an invoice, or you want to say, okay, these are the 3 clients that were the biggest clients last month. So you have the intent, and this assistant is going to tell you what you need to do to achieve it within the system. And in many cases, it can directly take you to this. For example, if you say that you want to issue an invoice for 3 televisions to Garcia PLC, then it's gonna create the invoice, and it's gonna just leave it ready for you to check it and just give it the final okay. So this is one of the most common patterns that we have. This is another one that we call it the search and chat. This gives you the possibility to give documents, information, images, and so on to the system, and then you will have an assistant that will allow you to write questions and get answers based on the documents that you gave it. Another very common scenario is the autocomplete scenario, just like you have it when you're using your email. This is an example of an application on Globant that we use to make recommendations or to congratulate a coworker within the company. And you can say, for example, write a message congratulating or thanking Carlitos for the help that he gave me during last presentation. And I say it shouldn't be too long and just mention the images that he sent me. So it's going to write this kind of recommendation with these features. You can say, make it shorter, make it longer, and you could use this to send messages to clients and providers. You could have an assistant, just like you would tell a secretary, send an email to this person saying this or that, claiming the payments that you requested last week that you still didn't get. And this produces a formal commercial-like message for the client or provider. That's the search and chat thing that I was telling you about. So in summary, what I was telling you is that we have to understand the impact of what we generate using GeneXus and the impact on the applications that we will be generating for our clients. Also, for us as GeneXus, as a company, this is having an impact on all these things, and it's also having an impact on the new products that we can release, what I told you about with GeneXus Next. And it's also generating a new product that is called GBrain that has to do with the need to use this in our systems. For example, GeneXus Next is using it, and some of the systems that we develop with the clients, this thing of having to constantly use AI services, you use multiple providers, multiple models, they will change the version. It's going to be 3.5, 4.0. This assistant is going to be for this, that one is going to be for that. So there is a full management, a whole management on it, and a use mechanism that we want to make easier. And again, in our spirit of trying to stay technology agnostic and provider agnostic, this GBrain does exactly that. It's a manager in terms of how you access AI, where you can precisely use those services and have different versions and define exactly what you want to do, what you want to use, when you changed it, what you changed it for. And probably it's going to definitely be a topic for another webinar. I can totally see Eugenio giving you a presentation on this, but it's part of this. It's part of this huge revolution that is happening around us with artificial intelligence. So I hope that this has been useful to all of you, and I sincerely hope that it has sparkled your interest and curiosity, and it has motivated you to move, because I'm absolutely convinced that we need to move, all of us, and we are more than open to any questions that you may have. But yeah, let's move on to the Q&A session, because I'm hoping that there will be a few. Thank you so much, Jose. Okay, we have Gabriel Medina who asked us a few questions. I don't know if Gabriel, you would rather ask them yourself, just if you open your microphone, or we can just read them if you want. The first question is it possible to enable the... Yeah, it's a request rather than a question. Yeah, clearly Gabriel is using GeneXus Next, and now we have an issue with the fact that we needed to put a limit for test applications. This is all a testing environment. And nowadays, users don't have a way of deleting this, and we are just doing it manually with the help desk whenever we get this request. We're working on it, Gabriel, okay? And the thing is that because you say, okay, why don't you just get a delete button? But the thing is that we are in the middle of the process of enabling addition. the addition for this no-code model in GeneXus Next, and this entails a number of transformations. And so just changing that now was going to overlap with the rest. So we chose to prioritize that second leg of the business. But very soon you will have the possibility to just see the projects that you have and delete one so that you have the quota available, let's say. Could we get a detail of the attributes of the entities on the platform? Again, yes, what I was showing you in that edition is that it's not just going to show you the different attributes that you're giving to the entities, but also it's going to allow you to rearrange them, change them, and so on. The next question is, can GeneXus Next add the capacity to request new entities or relations in the generated proposal? Again, it is exactly that, what I just told you about. It's that chat, that screen that I was sharing with you, where it was on the left you had the chat, and on the right you had a more structured vision of the model up until then. And in any case, in either case, you can tell the chat, okay, add this entity too, so that it will do, I don't know, in the case of, imagine with a law firm, you want to register courts of justice, yeah? Or you can do that more structured on the right, and then you can get the attributes. And can you make it easier to export the TRNs to an XPZ file of what you've done using GeneXus Next? Well, we're also working on that. It's going to be in the sense of either downloading a KB or giving you a link to a GeneXus server where the knowledge base is published. So yeah, I just love that. This feels like as if I had, asked you which questions you had to ask. So thank you so much. We're very coordinated, I think, quite on the same page. Alan Fuentes Toara says, do you have a release date for GeneXus Web IDE? The answer is no, I don't know exactly when. I know that we are working really hard to have it by the end of the year. I mean, as soon as possible, but I can't give you exactly the date. At least, I don't know. Then Claudia says, for now, everything is generated only in English when it comes to texts. The answer is yes, for now, it is only in English. But this is something that we could, when we make that call, we could say generated in Spanish or generated in English. In some cases, you will get a bit of a mix because as a matter of fact, if you think about it, when I wrote the description of the business, everything was in Spanish, and yet it generated everything in English. So we are working with OpenAI in the background, which is really good at this. You can say some stuff in English and some stuff in Spanish, and it will be the same for it. You can also speak and write in French, and it will be the same. But we are trying to see how we can allow it to generate in Spanish and French, and of course in other languages like Japanese or Arabic. And also to leverage the GeneXus capacity for multiple languages, having translations and so on. These are things that we will be working on very, very soon. Is the beta version available for GXBrain? No, it's not publicly available. It is available to us, but you don't have a public site where you can register. And yeah, so it's available in the sense that we have some specific projects and we're working with some clients to develop projects using it, but we don't have a one site where you can just go and register and start using it. But if you have a specific project in mind, do reach me or Eugenio or any other member of the team, and we can definitely talk about that. GeneXus Next, is it released already? No, it's a beta version. And we're going to be testing it. Will it be a new product or a new GeneXus version? It's a new product. What's most likely going to happen is that they're going to be mixed. So just like I showed you that in GeneXus we'll have assistants to generate objects, many of the things that we will implement with the case of GeneXus Next, it's going to make sense for it to be used directly from the IDE. So for example, this thing that we are doing just now of saying that you want to build a system for a pharmacy and that it will automatically generate transactions and attributes and work with patterns and objects and so on. It could also be a wizard that is triggered from the very IDE. So instead of saying, for example, a new knowledge base, you could write new application, and you could have the possibility to say that you want to create the back office for a pharmacy application. And all of that would happen within the IDE, whether it's the standard IDE or the web IDE. So that is a bit of what we're thinking. But in any case, it would be a separate product anyway. Luis Silva says, these GeneXus Next features, are they covered with the current GeneXus license, or is it sold separately? Nowadays, it's separate. Okay, it's not for sale yet, and it's not defined exactly what the licensing model it's going to be. Mauricio, he says, hi, Jose. Hi, Mauricio. Okay, who owns the intellectual property of what's generated? What is the business model that GeneXus is going to have? And how do you see the participation of the GeneXus community, companies and developers? Okay, the intellectual property, this is being developed with GeneXus. So in this case, it's just like as if you had developed it. It's just a tool for you to develop it, and that doesn't change. And the participation of the community, I think it's going to be very good. And business models, it's still a work in process. So I can't tell you that much for now. Bruno says I'm sorry that I'm speaking so fast, but yeah, if there is anything that I'm not being clear about, just let me know. But I see that we have so many questions, and I'm trying to go as fast as I can. Well, you know what I mean. To achieve that text-to-system transformation, is GeneXus Next connected to ChatGPT or similar? Well, it's not ChatGPT, but ChatGPT is the website that allows you to chat, and it has an OpenAI underlying engine that it could be the 3.5 engine or the 4.0 engine. But we are not using ChatGPT, but the OpenAI model directly. Why two consecutive requests on the same thing will generate different things? Because it is precisely how these models work. These are probabilistic models. And I wouldn't say that it's just like the same, because it's not exactly the same, but it's analogous to, for example, if I ask you, how was your day this morning? You're going to give me one answer that it's going to have certain words. And then if someone else, if a friend of yours 30 minutes later asks you exactly the same question, probably you will give a very similar content. It will be conceptually similar, but it's not going to be exactly the same words, right? So there is this probabilistic issue. And as a matter of fact, one of the parameters that these APIs have in terms of the responses that they provide has to do with the temperature, as they call it, which is how much variability or how much randomness it's going to apply to the answer that it's going to give you. A part of the process that the model does, if you asked it, for example, a word, what it's going to obtain internally is not one word, but a group of words that have different probabilities. And so one strategy could be, for instance, to always give you the one that has the highest probability. And that's what you call zero temperature, always yielding the most likely result. And usually the results that it produces tend to be quite, it can give you texts that are reasonably accurate, but usually quite hard and boring. And if you go to the other extreme, which is what they call temperature one, then it's going to happen. What people usually say that it's got delusional. It's going to have much more randomness, much more variability, and it's going to generate. It's similar to when someone is high, when someone is on drugs. Maybe these are phrases or sentences that are grammatically correct, but the answers that it's going to give you are a bit wilder. So depending on what you want, you can get more or less temperature. So generally what they have found is that zero point 0.7 is a relatively reasonable parameter that's going to give you that certainty that it's not that delusional, while at the same time the answers are going to feel very natural because it's not so robot-like, it's not so predictable or just like narrow. Then Philip is asking us, in GeneXus Next by Globan, can you request the assistant to add or change? Okay, no, for attributes, not at the moment. You get to the list of entities that I showed you today. Even the attributes of those entities are calculated afterwards. And we're going to be publishing an update very soon that we are now testing in data that's going to allow you to edit those data before you generate the application. How do you get in contact with a help desk? I have tried to use GeneXus Next and it doesn't allow me to create a model. It just says that I have created more models than I could with the trial version. Can you give me some help? Yeah, Pablo, we are aware of that. I'm sorry, I apologize. It's yeah, it's what I was saying, that we have prioritized to just like have the latest stuff up and running, and in the meantime we're just apologizing. I think that the email address that we are using now, it's contact at genexus.ai, which is for artificial intelligence, and just send us an email to that inbox. And again, really sorry, we are trying to answer to all of you and follow your advice and reply to your requests as fast as we can. Juan Antonio Suarez says, can you edit the code generated in GeneXus? Now we're not giving that option. It's one of the things that we want to enable internally. In some cases, we already have the scheme so that you can, apart from generating the application, the KB, you can upload it to a server and it will be available there. But we are on the way, okay? So that what you generate with GeneXus will be a GeneXus KB. The path to integrate agents and AI functions in our GeneXus generated applications is through this layer of service that you're working on. Yes, it's not available, but this is the idea, that it will be easier, very easy for you with GeneXus, with this high abstraction level that we always want to have in GeneXus, that users will be focused on the functional needs, and that we will be able to fix and overcome all the paraphernalia of just calling services and getting results. Then Aldo Vishaira says, on GXplain, I didn't quite understand. Could you explain the scope a little bit more? Yes, it is what I was just saying. Nowadays, the open AI models allow you to have access to it through APIs. So when you make a query, you need to write a call to an API with a certain URL and certain parameters, and format it in JSON, have a call, have a registered account, have your login associated to that account, make the call, and so on and so forth. And that call also includes some instructions and some ways of requesting, which is what we call the prompts, right? And there is a huge discipline in terms of how you're supposed to write prompts well. And the most straightforward way to do this is in each procedure where you need to do it, you write a prompt, you write a call, and then you make the call. And then, of course, that eventually becomes something that you can maintain and manage, because instead of using the 3.5 version, you want to start using the 4.0 version. But for that, it means that you need to change everything, to change the parameter, or you want to try a new provider and you don't want to rewrite all the programs, or maybe you want to use a different prompt, and so on and so forth. So Brain, what it will do is it will be a mediating layer, where instead of writing all the details and all the processes that you need to get the answers, you will catalog the assistants that you will be using and the tasks that you will be analyzing, and what model in particular you will be calling, what account, what token, what instructions, and so on and so forth. And it's going to give you back the results in a manageable format that is consumable in GeneXus. But this is working with objects at a much higher level, and that is basically the goal of this GX Brain. Okay, great. Can you hear me? Um, is it just something that you can do there, or can you make it extensible to a new version? GBrain is precisely thought for it to be independent of any provider and any model. Yeah, and even it is a product to be used not only with GeneXus development, which is actually one of the main challenges, that it will look as something that is independent from GeneXus. And is that in beta or something? Can we try it? Because you're going to be starting with a new version, and we want to see if that is that can be used. Yeah, okay. So I would like to encourage you to call Eugenio Garcia to contact him. He is the GX Brain product manager, and I am working mainly with GX Next. So sometimes we overlap, but for that question in particular, do you have Eugenio Garcia's contact? No, can you send me his email? Yeah, totally. And yeah, I'll send him a message. Thank you. Okay, we have Flavio Silva. His hand is raised. I don't know if Flavio want to ask a question. Actually, I think that we have two hands that are raised. I also have 13 questions left. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so let's go with Gabriel Medina. Hello. Hello, can you hear me? Thank you so much for your presentation. Very interesting, very useful, everything that's coming up next. I just wanted to say one thing that I think it's quite easy to fix. I know that nothing is that easy, but once it generates the XPZ, the TNRs and the attributes, that is already super useful and to get better results. So if you just release, just like you released the description text, if you had an XPZ with the attributes and the attribute transactions so that we can have the entities, that would be enough for us to use it as it is in new projects or ongoing projects. So I just want to insist on that request. Yes, absolutely. We will definitely take that into account. Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Of course. I normally we always have the ideal solution, and if there is any shot at having a shortcut, cutting corners in some way, we will definitely try that. But at the same time, we have so much stuff going on. We have to make decisions on a daily basis of what to do, what to put off. But definitely, that's one of our main priorities. Even to ourselves, GeneXus Next for us is being very useful as a way to present GeneXus, because what used to be the invoice demo, now it's a GeneXus Next demo. And yeah, absolutely. We are constantly we're constantly getting this kind of request. But yeah, I'll listen to what you said, and I'll try to do that as fast as we can. Okay. Luis says, what additional complements do you need for the licenses installation if we already work with GeneXus 18? With GX 18, all the assistants will be in beta. So the ones that you get directly on the ID, and we don't have a definition yet in terms of how it will be commercialized. Felipe? Go ahead. Hey, very good afternoon, Aníbal. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to ask you the following question. If we could take as an example the concept that was shown in the Iron Man movie, where you can have a conversation with the assistant. And in this case, primarily, you would have to add the possibility to get voice recognition so that the sentence or the prompt will not necessarily be in writing, but you can just do it by talking to the AI. And then if you could, for example, say, can you GeneXus Next, can you build a system for a pharmacy, and that GeneXus Next will propose something that will say, these are the things that will be done, and to be able to just talk to it and say, okay, in this transaction, I would like you to add these attributes, and I would like to remove these other attributes, and so on. And the same thing for any other kind of transaction. Then once you generate the model, it would be interesting to be able to interact in the same way. To say, for example, okay, the business reality has changed, and now I would like you to add these transactions or to modify these calculations. And then um, an additional question, which is if you could have the option for this content to have to upload an XPZ as a reference so that the model will use it as its initial input for the conversation that was proposed. Thank you so much, and excellent presentation. Thank you so much, Felipe. One of the things that we can do is based on the status and the state of affairs that you can change some things. Yeah, that's part of what we're doing at two levels. First, at no code level, which is a GeneXus Next level, that as I was showing you, that you can just say that it will tell you not only the entities, but also its compositions, and that you can say, I want to add this, I want to remove that, I want to add data, remove data, and some more design things. And we're also thinking about adding the different queries that you want to ask to the system so that you can generate queries and graphs and so on. And the other level is to do that as assistants within the GeneXus IDE, whether it's the web one or the standard one, and that you can say, okay, now the business reality has changed, and now I need to add this attribute or to manage to be able to manage this component or this aspect in a certain way, and that it will make a suggestion, and it will make changes to entities, or it will define new processes, procedures, and so on and so forth. That is definitely in the roadmap. The other thing that you were saying, the other thing that you were saying is to add that um, the input of having natural spoken language. We haven't done any work yet on that, but I understand that it's just adding a new layer so that you have voice recognition, voice to text, and from there to just keep it running. So I don't see greater complexity or any kind of setbacks in the sense. Just it's about adding an extra layer. In practice, even though the audio option is very good because it has a in the demos and everything, it has a very interesting effect. In practice, honestly, I feel that I'm much more comfortable whenever I'm interacting writing text than having to use audio, for example, than having to speak. So maybe if I am driving and I don't want to be using my phone, because that would mean that I'm looking at the screen and not at the road, then definitely I would like to send an audio. But otherwise, for this kind of thing, I think that writing is much better. But that's very subjective. It's just me, and it's changing. And perhaps in a couple of years, I feel completely different about this, or it will depend on generations. I'm an old man, and maybe younger generations are much more adapted to audio, and it feels much more natural to them. But it's definitely something worth considering. Okay, Mauricio Valverde, what's the difference between Power Autocomplete and what ChatGPT already has? Okay, so ChatGPT, you can ask it general questions and it will give you general answers. What we are talking about here is, as I was showing you with Power Autocomplete, it's just an example of having something like that within your very own applications. And that instead of having to go to ChatGPT to ask a question and to say, for example, how would you write this or that, you can just do it directly within. And also the advantage that that autocomplete component is going to be able to use context that you won't have on ChatGPT. For example, context from your own application, instructions on how to do something. So it's much more customized than if you just use ChatGPT outside. And I think that's mainly the difference. Eduardo Sanchez said, can GeneXus Next take a KB as an input context and then specify what new changes should happen to create a new version for that KB? Yes. Yes and no. It could, but the path that we see is to be on the GeneXus side. So if you have a KB and you have access to a KB and you're working at KB level, then what you will have is assistance within the KB editor that is the GeneXus IDE to perform any tasks for changes. So these changes will most likely be done in GeneXus, will be made in GeneXus. That's we're probably going to be defining that sometime soon, but it would be useful and we would like to, but we don't know exactly how feasible it is to have iterations at no code level, not at the GeneXus KB level, but at the highest level that you get with GeneXus Next, to be able to tell GeneXus Next, okay, generate the application that is using GeneXus in the background, and maybe you don't even have to see that, and then to ask some changes, and it will make changes on that GeneXus KB, and you won't be even seeing that. That is definitely something that we would like to achieve, but we still have some uncertainty in terms of that's going to be feasible or not. Okay, are you going to do anything with Augur? Yeah, probably we're going to have integration with that as another service. And as a matter of fact, part of the bet that we have made on GX Brain is exactly having access to any AI component, and Augur may as well be one of them. Okay, great. One last question. Michael, Mycon, are you there? Okay. Okay, Mycon, I don't know if you can open your mic. Okay, it seems that we can't. So, Jose, thank you so much for your presentation. Thanks a lot to everyone for joining us today. And as you know, this presentation and all presentations will be on our website, genexus.com/webinars, and I'll see you next time around. Thank you, Jose, so very much. It was a pleasure. And yeah, do send any questions that you have. You know how to reach us on our channels. Okay, so let's stay in touch. It's a pleasure to share this time with you. Bye-bye. Thank you.